Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, my co-host, Keith Bogan.
Top of the morning to you.
Doug Hamadike.
Present.
And the finally returning from assignment, Chad Holloway.
Good morning.
Today, we're going to be talking about what became a national story probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago almost, where the story came out about at first the disappearance and eventually murder of Gabby Petito, among other things, which also led to the disappearance and eventual finding the remains of her fiance, Brian Laundrie. So it's basically pretty much every parent's worst nightmare. Who wants to kick us off?
I was wondering, Jason, if you were looking for other remains around your laptop just now, but I'll leave that alone. Not to put that into a facetious light. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this because we've talked about it a little bit here and there before this recording. And one of the beautiful things about our podcast is the different perspectives, Jason with the kids who are 7 and 10 or something like that. And me with the oldest with the 22 and 19, or is it Frankie? I forget if he's older. But the different dynamic of kids who are home versus kids who are not. And I remember walking down a street with Justin when he was 4, maybe 3. And I was always the parent who challenged my kids to grow faster, and it always used to drive my then wife crazy because she was perfectly content to let them develop as they saw fit, and I was always like, try this, and I was holding his hand, and I thought, it's a pretty crowded street, but let's see what happens if I let go of his hand. Will he walk with me? And I thought, okay, I'll just watch him and everything. And that was the moment I realized that watching means laser focus, because I let go of his hand. We walked a little ways. He was right next to me. I did one of these. I literally just shifted my head left and right, and he was gone. I mean, that's how fast it happens. He just took another turn. I don't even know what happened. And the 45 seconds that ensued felt more like about 6 years. It was Princeton. We were in Palmer Square, which is considered a very safe area. I think it was a weekend, and it was the middle of the day, like lunchtime. Took us about 45 seconds to find him, but the panic that goes through you is indescribable. Now, play that against today. Justin is 22. He's a graduate student in South Carolina. I don't hear from him for days at a time, and when I text him, I still don't hear from him, and when I call him, he doesn't answer. But you sort of operate on this faith that they're doing the right thing and that everything's okay, and that if something had happened, that maybe his roommate would call or something. But of course, I realized that his roommate doesn't even have my contact information by design. Justin, as much as we are close, is very independent, and he's never given me his roommate's details, and vice versa, I'm sure. But you sort of take that stuff on faith. It's something you have to learn, and you still don't ever get comfortable with it. I'm sure there are times when Frankie's been on the road, and there have been windows of time when Chad thought he was going to talk to Frankie and There was no answer. And you start thinking, you start wondering. Yeah, you call it every parent's worst nightmare. And unfortunately, it hasn't happened to us. For me, it's happened to people close to me. The famous Uber girl from South Carolina, from what is now 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I can't even place it. Might be 3 years ago.
3, I'm pretty sure.
And she was, as I've talked privately with you guys about, she was the daughter of in a family in Robbinsville, the next town over. A girl that the family is somebody my ex-wife knew very, very well. I mean, they've known each other for decades, and I watched that little girl grow up, saw her at parties, saw the parents at the funeral, saw the parents at other times. Man, you just can't. You can't walk up and say I'm sorry. It just doesn't. Words don't have any meaning. You just stare, especially when it's somebody you know. And Justin knew Samantha. That was her name. Justin knew her really, not really well, but they were classmates at South Carolina, not in the same class, but she was a senior, I think, when he was a freshman or sophomore. And they hadn't spent much time together since they were little kids, but they used to hang at parties as little kids, and, play together, even though they didn't really know each other. But we all know the Josephson family really closely. Ever since Gabby was discovered, there's been this wild explosion of other people who have disappeared and who have been found not alive. The Samantha disappearance and murder certainly put a spotlight on part of the topic, and I think the Gabby disappearance and murder seems to have shifted the national focus entirely onto missing persons finally. I mean, there's been this wave of other people whose bodies have been found now finally after being disappeared for a while. I got no words. I don't know how parents get on TV after their kids are found dead and say anything, let alone, hey, find the murderer, or they start a movement or they start a foundation. Oh my God, the Josephsons have done this amazing global movement about rideshare, about how to make rideshare safer, because that's how Samantha died. It was in an Uber, not really an Uber, and my hats they have to come off to all those parents, because thinking about it, I'm not sure I would ever breathe again if that happened.
And Keith, just to follow up a little bit, we've had some families that we know too. This was probably 15 or 20 years ago, but some friends of ours had a dance store, but it wasn't too far off one of the main highways. And their daughter, who was I think 17 or 18, was working there one day on a Sunday, and somebody came in and killed her. And I don't think they stole anything; they just killed her. But they suspect they got off the highway, and then got back on and just kind of kept passing through. But I don't think they've ever found anybody or have any real suspects in that murder. But it was just horrible for the family, thinking about somebody that young, dying at the hands of others. And and to your point, like the other day, Frankie called me. He's been sick with something since probably mid-September, and he's been to the Student Health Center twice. He's been to urgent care, and then this day he went to the ER and still hadn't been able to find any relief. But I could tell talking to him that he was getting scared about what he had, because the last time he went somewhere, they tested him for valley fever, which if you don't know about that, it's a fungal infection from the desert that about 150,000 people in Arizona typically will get. And it's people who are from other areas and who don't grow up in Arizona are much more susceptible to it, is my understanding. So he's thinking he has this valley fever, and he's sick. He can't cough. He can't stop coughing. He can't get any good sleep. He's starting to miss classes much more frequently, and he can't go to class because he's interrupting so much with his coughing. But I could sense the fear in his voice. And, I told him right away, I said, if you want to come home, to my house or to your mom's house or whatever, I said, just, give me the word and we'll get you set up with some plane tickets. But, at that point I started getting worried, and that isn't even, nothing had really happened, but there's this anxiety that you get from something possibly happening or from a fear of the unknown. Right. So I can only imagine what these parents have gone through, both the young lady who was killed in the store, the lady that you talked about, the family that you talked about, Keith, and then also just with this Petito family, not knowing what happens, it's just horrible. And that made me start thinking about some stories around the St. Louis area. One that is just incredible. Some kid had been missing for, at the time, probably 5 or 6 years, and nobody had been able to find anything. But the family persisted in saying, we're trying to find our 8-year-old son. And well, at that time he was a little older, but they continued to seek him out. And about the same time, about the time all this stuff was happening, probably 5 or 6 years after this kid had been taken, another kid was taken about the same age. He was riding his bike on a desert road, or not a desert, on a deserted road. And somebody came by and got him, picked him up, and they said it was this white pickup or whatever. So they started looking around. They found this kid, and they found the other kid. This guy had kidnapped, and I can't remember the name. I want to say Sean was the first one who was kidnapped. I want to say that was his name. But they had found this kid who had been basically held hostage and as a sex slave for like 5 years. And the kid is just psychologically just torn up. I mean, there's nothing, but he's alive. And it was amazing that they found him, and they found the other child as well. But this guy would even go to work and leave the kid kind of unsecured, if you will, because he had brainwashed him so bad. So he would be like outside playing and knew the neighbors. Neighbors like, yeah, we thought that this guy was his uncle and he was his guardian or something along those lines. But the kid wouldn't leave and wouldn't go to his family, and because of something this guy had scared him with, apparently. So when you think about those things, there's just so much in the world that can worry and can bring fear to a family and tragedy. Whether it's a murder, or I can think of another family. Their son died at a pretty early age of cancer, and like I went with Frankie to the visitation, but I couldn't talk to them. I was ready to cry the whole time because I'm thinking about how they must feel. But everybody there was pretty comfortable with it, the family and stuff. But I think they had time to transition into it. But I mean, and when I say comfortable, I mean, they could talk about it without crying. It's just so difficult. But then to imagine, the other scenario where you have your child just missing and you don't know what happened. These are just horrible things. And I'm sure, just like in the family, some of the things that go through my mind is, well, what happened? Was it a prolonged death? How scared was she when he was killing her? How did he kill her? What, why? How did all this stuff happen? And then of course you have the anger towards him afterwards.
Mm.
So there's it's full of emotions, and it's just not, it's nothing I want anybody to go through.
Yeah, those are awesome, well thought like things. And yeah, it's scary when you have family and people that depend on you and people that are always around you that you love. And the fact that someday they could just disappear like that is really tough. And as my boys get older and they have more time alone, well, out with their friends and stuff, not around us as much, because we really do a lot, well, nearly everything as a family. So whenever we're apart, it's like, wow, so we're just getting used to that, with our kids starting to venture out more and more. But I guess the scare came to us, a couple months ago, was the fact that we haven't heard from my parents, and I talk to my parents, once or twice a week or whatever, but we call basically every Thursday. And one Thursday I called, and there nothing. So it was like, all right, well, and then it was Friday you call, and you know nobody answered or anything, and you start to wonder, like, well, maybe they went out, they're retired now, they have parties they go to, bingo and stuff like that. uh but yeah, nothing much until we found out from one of their neighbors that my parents were in the hospital with COVID. And we were like, wow. you know my brother wasn't aware, and his family wasn't aware either, and it was just like, wow, crazy. And how bad, and what a bad way they were on top of that. And it was just very shocking, very concerning, and how something like that, you take for granted every day. Well, you talk to them all the time, you see them so many different ways with media today, Facebook and all that stuff. And then one day, you're thrown out of your norm, and the next day, it's like you find out and you're like, well, that who knows how it could have went with them, in the they were in a, pretty extreme case with it in the hospital. And that was just like, wow, you know. So, I don't know.
So, as Chad alluded to about the case itself, I don't think there's any surprise as to who is believed to have perpetrated this heinous act, and that would be her fiance, Brian Laundrie. And you want to talk about parents' reaction? Quite unique, to say this least. The reaction of Brian Laundrie's parents when all this was going on, especially as it pertained to their son. Some may say they might have aided in his escape, I guess. Is hiding, whatever you might want to say. I'm not saying they told him where to go or took him there or anything like that, but they definitely seem like they were stalling, trying to put off the chase for him or anything like that. And then finally, towards the end, cooperated. Most likely, or started to cooperate, most likely because I have a feeling they knew what he was going to do. And where he, maybe not where he was going, but I have a feeling they may have known that what the end game was. And while obviously hesitant and tried to talk him out of it, I think they kind of were pretty well aware of what was going to happen. So Keith, I believe you have there's another situation you were talking about with someone closer to home.
No, Samantha was pretty, I don't want to say she was close to home. She was,
Meaning proximity to here, not.
well, it's hard to get closer than Robbinsville.
Your friend at Rutgers.
There are too many of these stories. Not sure I want to go down that path again. It's very similar. I'm jumbled for a second. Hold on. Somebody being killed and you not having control. And it's about control for humans. I mean, parents want to be able to control the fate, not the actions, but the fate of their kids. Well, so when I was, well, not when I was, this goes back 10 years. And I was a mentor at Rutgers. I come out of the human resources graduate program at Rutgers, and one of the ways I give back is I mentor some of the students. And I was actually mentoring the entire human resources debate team. Yes, actually, that's a thing. They get together and they go to other schools to teach HR students, and they debate each other on business topics. And I was mentoring the team there, but in particular, the leader of the team, a young woman named Pamela Schmidt. Not my daughter, but someone I became extremely fond of. I spent a lot of time with, and who would periodically confide in me about her personal life and this guy she was dating, and that he had a lot of challenges and he was a little unstable, but she knew that if someone showed faith in him and stuck with him, he could overcome his demons. And his demons were, to a certain extent, drug related. I think there was some alcohol involved. And he had a tendency toward being very possessive and somewhat violent. Anyway, so I remember the day we were having a coffee at a Starbucks-ish like place down Route 130 in South Brunswick. And we were just going over notes for the next competition and how to handle certain people and on the team and all that. And I could tell she was getting nervous. She had to get back. She didn't want to be late. Her boyfriend was expecting her. She needed to get home and clean up the place they had so he wouldn't get angry. And that was the last I saw of her. A couple days later, someone called me from Rutgers to tell me that she had been killed. He'd come home from that meeting and he had been angry, and he had taken a lamp and crushed her skull. And like I said, I wasn't her father. I wasn't her parents. But I'm sure I was a father figure to her. She's close with her parents, but there's a responsibility you live with that you take on if you're somewhat of an empathic person. You care for all the people in your sphere of influence. You're as when you're younger, I was a coach for a number of years in sports, and they were all my kids. I took it very seriously, their safety and their well-being and their competitive spirit and their sportsmanship and things like that. And you sort of feel parentish to all of them, even though their parents are sitting right there while they're playing. Although interestingly enough, not all of them. That's the terrible thing about being a coach, is watching kids show up day after day to a sporting event where their own parents don't bother to show up. But with Pam, yeah, I don't have any daughters. She could have easily been, a daughter. This was 10 years ago, so I was in my late 40s, and she was 21, 22, I think 21. No, I'm sorry. Boy, I put all this stuff out of my head. She was 23. What if we had stopped talking a little earlier? What if I had done more to have the conversations with her about the uneasy situation I knew she was in? I was kind of proud of her for being that dedicated to somebody, to caring that much about someone. Never dreamed anything else would happen, but you live with the should you have done more? Should you have helped more? Should you have interceded in some way? I would have if it had been my boys, but I guess I handled it differently. That's another funeral. If there was 500 people there, it was probably a lot more than that. You look at the completely empty eyes of the parents. They're there, but they're not there. I remember staying in the cemetery for 2 or 3 hours after the services were over and everybody was gone. And I just kind of looked at the grave site for a long time. You never want to be part of these. When I say part of you, God, you don't even want to know people like this, because it's such a frustrating feeling to be that powerless. And thank God I could go home to my kids at that point and give them a hug. Thank God that they were still home. If it was now, I'd be driving to South Carolina and I'd be driving to Ohio and I'd be not letting go at all.
It's just such a tragic story. I know this is the second time you told us about it. I can tell emotionally how it impacted you, and but knowing personally, this woman and her demise. It's just a horrible thing. But something that you said earlier, Keith, kind of struck me, and that's, we don't want to control our children's actions, but we do want to control their fate. And I was thinking about this kind of in a different way, a different perspective, because I think when we talk about this, we really identify immediately with the girl in the situation. But to Jason's point, the parents of the guy helped him in some way, right? Or that's what we think, is that they helped him, that they stalled the investigation. Now, what if we were on the other side of that? Heaven forbid. And we all got good kids, so I don't want to say anything about that. But hypothetically, what if we were the parents of this guy? What do we do? Because what was it, a one-off and he made a bad mistake? Was it something he has consistently done? As a parent, how do you feel about that?
Well, with this guy, they haven't been very forthcoming, and you haven't gotten a lot of information except for what happened recently. There's been some that he had a tendency to be a survivalist, that he knew how to handle things like situations like that. But some has come out about his past, but not a whole heck of a lot. I don't remember seeing much anything, in fact. As I said, because no one's been very forthcoming. So we know that excuse me. In this case, he had a pattern that was becoming apparent. Whether that translates to anything in his past, as I said, I mean, it's kind of quiet about it. Do I tend to think he might have? Sure. Because if it is once, it's once. You don't get the pattern before that usually, which there is a pattern. There definitely is a pattern from before that. So if it's a pattern, usually it's not just the one person.
So if you're his parent, what do you do?
Oh, I'll jump in on that one because, well, firstly, I want to preface it by saying that I hate the concept of the court of public opinion. We were all quick to assume this guy's guilt when the story hit because the media painted a picture that made him look like a bastard, that he had to be the guy. So nationwide, no matter what, he was guilty. To this moment, we have no idea if he was or not. All we know is what the fucking media has been telling us. And they're only going to tell us the stuff that they know is going to inflame the situation. So we're going to listen more. I'm not saying the guy's innocent. He's probably a scum-sucking son of a bitch. He probably deserved to die more horribly than he did. Who knows? But we don't know. And it's not our job to draw that conclusion. That's in the hands of the authorities and the courts and all that sort of thing. It just frustrates me. I think we've all jumped to the conclusion that he was a terrible person, guilty, and he did it and all that. And, we only know what the media tells us. Now, with that said, answering your question, Chad, we can't. Because Chad, Doug, Jason, I've watched you guys raise your kids. And I think I've done an okay job myself raising mine. We're good parents. With all due respect to this guy, if this guy is as evil as it sounds like, that's part of the product of how he was raised. Mm-hmm. So are we, they leapt to the conclusion that they should possibly, if we believe the media, protect him and shield him until he figures out a way to off himself. Again, that's what the media tells us. Who knows if it actually happened, but I also wouldn't necessarily have a whole lot of faith in their reaction. Their reaction is going to be a lot different because they didn't know how to raise the kid to begin with. Mm-hmm. They must have done some pretty tough things to put him in a position where he would do something like that. We can't relate to that. If A, I don't think it could ever happen. I've seen all the kids here. And B, if it did, I'd be dragging my kid right down to the police station and say, "You fucker, you're going to pay for your crimes." Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, Doug, that'll get Linda back into the. You'll always hear from her. I had to throw the F-bomb in there once.
Twice. You were leaning towards it and didn't say it.
I got to make sure that she, we get comments so that we know where she is all the time. It's good.
She's doing better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, I don't think we can at all relate to what the parents of this guy did or didn't do because we don't think that way.
I would argue something else too, Keith, and that's that just like the court of public opinion can slay somebody in the media, we really don't know that much about his upbringing as well. I mean, when you look at the house, what I look at, I think of my grandparents' house. When I look at that house, like I go, oh, it looks like my grandparents' house. It's got the camper out front. They probably went camping, which is good, wholesome family fun. So my thing is, did the kid just make a mistake? Did he have a problem drinking? Maybe was there something going on? I mean,
well, no.
There's a lot of.
They both had mental issues. They've confirmed that 100%. Both of them had mental health issues.
Well, both of who?
It's a big secret.
Both of who?
That is not a big secret. They both had a history of mental illness.
Are you talking about both of the parents or Gabby and Brian?
Both Gabby and Brian, both of them had a history of mental illness.
Okay, so that makes it a whole different ballgame, I think, then, because if somebody has mental illness, depending on how the way that you look at it, is it a medical issue so that they really aren't responsible for their actions if there's something that goes wrong? I mean, that's what happens a lot. They were, kind of quote unquote criminally insane, or having an issue, a breakdown or something at that time. So sometimes that even complicates things more, I think, because then it's like they're some of their upbringing goes out the window. Although I think that in most cases, I think that plays a huge role, is how they were brought up. But if somebody has a mental illness, I used to work with seriously mentally ill people. I did my postdoc in that, and if they're on their meds, everything's copacetic. If not, they can have some real problems, some real breaks. They do not know what is going on.
And when we go back to the Pam situation, the girl from Rutgers, there's probably no question that this guy snapped, when he grabbed the lamp and crushed her skull and all that, and probably didn't know what he had done at that moment. He might have known 5 minutes later, but he didn't know at the moment. When I was in Rutgers as a student, I think I was 19 years old. A friend of mine, this young woman who I was attracted to, but we were just friends. Her name was Renee. And I remember, we talk every day, hang out, whatever. And then one day I didn't hear from her for several days. And I come to learn that she had been raped on campus. And I did see her briefly after that. Again, the life had gone out of her eyes. It was just a blank stare. And then that was the last time I ever saw her. She dropped out of school and disappeared. I never heard from her again. And I remember they caught the guy who did it. But at 19, all I saw was rage. All I had was rage. You hurt a friend of mine. You destroyed a friend of mine. And I remember going to the police station where they were holding him, trying to learn when the court hearings and the arraignment were going to be. And I was so filled with rage, all I wanted to do, and I was literally pointing toward killing this person, because all I could see as a 19-year-old was rage. But that's the difference. Now as an older person, when Sam was killed, they caught the guy pretty quickly. He never saw the light of day again. When Pam was killed, they caught the person very quickly. Not only did he never see the light of day, but in a year, I think it was a year and a half after he was imprisoned, his prison mates ended his life, much to everybody's joy. And I'm looking forward to that
I
happening.
remember hearing that.
I'm really looking forward to that happening with in the situation with the person who killed Sam. But you think of it differently. In those cases, they were able to catch and define all the situations, so we knew the person was guilty. But you step back and you let the courts do what they're supposed to do. You let the police do what they're supposed to do. People of lesser maturity react differently, if you will. That's a lot of problem in this country, because a lot of people who want to take care of business themselves to terrible people like that. I'm not immune from it. Don't get me wrong. If I was put in the room with those people, those people wouldn't be breathing anymore. But I wouldn't go out of my way to get myself to that room, because they'd already been incarcerated and wouldn't see the light of day again. It's going back to the whole court of public opinion thing. We're much too quick to announce things like this and convict in such ways. We could go off on a lot of tangents here. We could talk. Was it the Duke soccer team, or lacrosse team? I forget. I don't even
Lacrosse.
want to go down that path, but you know, how many times have we had somebody arrested or groups of people arrested and then they turned out not to be guilty? I am not defending this son of a bitch who was who appears to have been the means to Gabby Petito's death, but I also don't. I'm not going to form opinions about that person. I'm only going to mourn the loss of a young life. It's not my job to form an opinion or convict with it, you know, especially based on what the media chooses to tell us. Can you tell I have a very low opinion of our media?
I was gonna say, also picking up on what Chad was saying, another part of his like question was like how as us as parents, how we would handle something similar to that, you know, and I think that I've known a lot of families that on the outside that you would swear that, you know, they're just well put together families and all. And when something does happen to your child where they do something monstrous against another person or society, obviously, the parents go out to defend their child and say, hey, no, they're X, Y, and Z. How many times have we also seen that in the media that, you know, my kid is the salt of the earth? And it's one of those things where, you know, is it because it's obviously your undying care and love for your child, but at the same time, it's also maybe a reflection on yourself and how what's going on in your own household that you don't want. But there's so many parents that will go out to defend their child with even faced with the facts of something that their child has done, you know, and I can't imagine that either. Like being on that side of it, like as Chad put that, you know, this has happened to you, you know, is coming to your life and is something that you now have to deal with as a parent, you know, A, with your issue as what your child has done, and B, like coming to grips to like what is the underlying factor of that. And maybe there is just like a mental thing or something that, you know, that you couldn't have done anything about, but yet still it's, you know, the guilt you must feel and powerlessness and everything else that, you know, as well as it goes to, you know, like we were saying, just you know, when your child makes a choice and which happens and something like this happens, and it's, I don't know, but yeah, us as a parents, you know, being advocates for our kids just is something that, you know, it's another tough thing. And what if you are a good parent, or what if you're not a good parent? And, you know, just interesting.
It's been alluded to a couple of times, though. Discussion of how it's handled by the legal system and the law enforcement. I don't think it's any surprise or any I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I don't think it's much of a stretch to believe that when it comes to law enforcement, they dropped the ball, so to speak, in this case. They, for as long as it took them to eventually find Brian Laundrie's remains in the same area that they began looking in the first place 6 weeks earlier, is kind of baffling if you think about it. I've been in sort of in that preserve driven through it, because there's an area of it that's Route 75 runs through in Florida between Sarasota and Punta Gorda in Florida. We ran through it a couple of times because we went to Siesta Keys, which is a beach that's south of Sarasota. It's a nice beach there that when my father lived in Florida, we went there a few times. So yeah, been through it. It's not the most pleasant, even just seeing it from the road. Those aren't the most pleasant living conditions for somebody, whether you're on the run or it's not. Put it this way, it's snake infested, it's gator infested. You're not going there on vacation.
Don't forget the
So
mosquito.
right. Mosquitoes probably the size of that. Those are the babies. Yeah, it's not a very pleasant area to be in. Like I said, you don't go on vacation there. So 6 weeks later, they find him. Well, what's left of him, in this preserve. How long was he there? You know, how long was he alive while he was there? Because the way, apparently the condition they found him in, it's wild. I really think law enforcement screwed this one up. In fact, they've admitted to it, how badly they screwed this case up. I'm honestly, in some cases, but that was also a pretty extensive, search by the FBI that found her. And I know it was in within a few weeks that they found her, maybe 2 or 3 weeks that they found her after she went missing, something like that. They found her in the middle of September. But he was under surveillance for a while, and he just disappeared. That's one thing that absolutely blows my mind in this is law enforcement's handling of it. It's pretty ridiculous. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's certainly not the first time law enforcement has botched
No.
an investigation. And, we think about famous cases like OJ and such like that, and they botch it all the time. If we really had a lot of time today, which we don't, but we could really go down the whole, and please don't react to this. We could go down the whole defund the police route, not to defund, because I don't think anybody here wants to get rid of police. But the idea of they're not given the right resources. They're given a badge and a gun and said, go catch bad guys. And the training is horrifically poor. And when they botch investigations like this, we see it. They don't have the right resources. We spend the money for police in the wrong places, and instead of giving them the right resources and the right training and the right tools to do the right thing for people. And we can have a whole other conversation about funding the police the right way later, but this is just another example of a botched case, but it's also an example of, do we really know everything that's going on, or do we just know what the media is telling us? I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again.
I think the police may have known more than the media let us know. Let's put it that way.
I have no doubt.
This was, you bring up OJ. This is Keystone Cops compared to OJ.
That's pretty sick.
Seeing the clock. Anybody have anything they want to add? We're gonna probably because honestly, I don't want to say it this way, but it's inevitable before this happens again, most likely, and comes back into our wheelhouse.
Well, the national spotlight is now on missing persons. So yeah, we're going to hear this all the time for a while. And what subject is more near and dear to our heart on the negative side than this type of thing? I mean, I'd love to do some shows, of course, about all the positive things, all the accomplishments of what's going on in the world for our kids and kids in general. But this is front and center of our lives all the time. If you're wrapping up, Jason, I do want to add a little note here that has nothing to do with our show. It's more of I get to pridefully announce that Justin has landed a job. He's about to graduate in May or August from his program at the University of South Carolina, and he is going to work for KPMG. The accounting as an accounting student, this is like the pinnacle. So, this has been a tough show. This has been probably the hardest show I've done, probably for all of us in terms of content. But I'm going to take the liberty of final words being a celebration. 5 years of undergraduate and graduate school for Justin. He got the job everybody wants. So there's been a lot of celebrating here.
Good.
Awesome. That's great news.
I don't.
It's time to cut the cord, right?
No, it's the other way around. I'm going to be holding on to him and let him support me. What are you talking about?
Nice. Well, please congratulate him for us.
Thank you. I absolutely will. It's been coming in from a lot of places, and I got to take his announcement on LinkedIn and forward it to my network. And geez, we're just getting buried with good wishes and all that. It's been fabulous.
Yep, awesome.
Congratulations. I don't know if I even told you guys or not. I'm not sure. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Delaney is running for class president.
Why am I not surprised?
She made it through the first round. We made posters last week for her. Last Sunday we went making the posters, and I remember sitting there, and I'm kind of like, I know it's a fifth grade election. I'm like, she's got to have something to grab onto, and I don't know where it where it came from, but Together We'll Succeed popped in my head, so that kind of became her slogan, I guess. I don't know. We're not sure when the election is. I don't think she even knows yet. It's probably sometime next week, I would assume. But yeah, she made it through the first round of it. Not surprisingly, though, she's running against the PTA president's son. So we know it's a little bit of an uphill climb. So, and two other people are running for president, but we'll see.
Those are great. That's great experiences. Justin did the same thing. Jeremy, both of my kids, I believe, ran for various things, and they didn't win, but they had a great experience doing it. They learned a lot doing it too. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, if you need somebody to come in and leave a dossier or slander the competition in some way, I have my price.
We did say when they before they vote that Delaney has to go and screen this election's rigged.
Oh wait, wouldn't it be great if she showed up at school tomorrow with a lot of extra ballots taped to her body so she could stuff the box? That'd be good.
Yeah.
If you have anything else to add, go ahead, Doug. What do you say?
Oh no, I was gonna say Brendan joined one of the clubs at school, so now he'll be working with the hospital and shadowing some of the people at the hospital, and got his first paycheck. And
Right.
yeah, he started working as a dishwasher at a local restaurant. So I was happy that at 15 he's already out there working. And Colin won the Halloween costume last night for scariest youth.
Send us pictures later. I want to see that.
Awesome. Well, then I guess since we're talking about positive news, I guess I shared a little bit with you guys before the program today. But I've got my Colombianas here now. Finally, we got the visas. We got through the system with a couple hiccups, but everybody's here now. So I'm super happy. I think they're happy at this point. We're still kind of acclimating in certain respects. Enjoying. I think I might have sent to you guys and said that we that they like to order food through the window of the car, go through drive-thrus. So that's a good thing. And then last Friday in town here, we had a little kind of a trick or treat thing down in the town square. So we participated in that. So it was really their first time trick or treating. My wife didn't do much trick or treating, but she enjoyed the process. And then today in our apartment complex, we're going to go trick or treating as well. So, I think it's going to be an enjoyable experience and a fun experience, something I've never experienced before. So, lots of good things going on.
We should have opened with that, and I actually meant to, but we kind of just went right into it. We're thrilled, Chad, that
Thank
all
you.
finally worked out. We know you've been through a lot with it, and but it's nice that this system finally worked for you and all of it. I know it wasn't easy, but we'd like to take this second, all of us, from all three of us, to welcome your family to the US, to their new home, and hope that they enjoy being here and can find the things that really do make this country as great as it is. It is still, sure, it's got its problems, but it is a good place to be in most cases.
Definitely.
But from all of us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very, very happy for you, brother.
them
Very
too.
happy. Very happy for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I think that about wraps us up. Like I said, this is something we're probably going to, I'm sure, revisit throughout doing this, because things like this happen more often than not. We don't always, as Keith said, we're just really, I think this is the tip of an iceberg right now, and these going to be coming fast and furious. So, well, I hope not, but when we found out about Gabby's death, it was definitely hold on to your kid a little tighter, and continue to. So from all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody.